Well, tonight, senior high schools across the country could grind to a halt as CHASS reveals some key food items have not been supplied to schools since the inception of the 2024-2025 academic year, affecting the smooth running of the schools. We have details for you. As the schools say, they have now reached their wit end, and it has become extremely difficult to manage the system effectively. More as the minority in parliament questions government about the use of funds approved for the running of senior high schools.
Why is government not releasing the funds when in parliament every year we approve the maximum request made to finance the program? So if we do that, what is the reason why government is not making the funds available to the schools as they capture in their letter to finance recurrent expenditure? Is it that government doesn't have the money, although we approve the money on paper?
More of this surely here on Top Story, brought to you always by Telecel, connecting energies and holy insecticide spray and coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. Well, tonight, senior high schools across the country could grind to a halt as a conference of heads of assisted secondary schools reveal there is no money to run the schools. According to CHASS, government has refused to release outstanding payment for recurrent fees since the 2021 academic year, as well as refund of monies meant for carting food items from regional zonal food centers. In a letter dated 13th November 2024, CHASS says some key food items have not been supplied to schools since the inception of the 2024-2025 academic year, affecting the smooth running of the schools. My colleague James Avaji joins me in studio with details of this particular letter. James, what issues is CHASS raising?
Well, Bress, this letter is in reference to an initial letter written on the 20th of September this year, reminding the government to release outstanding payment for recurrent fees owed to schools since the 2021 academic year, as well as refund of monies meant for cutting food items from zonal regional centers, as you have mentioned. Now, they say that, quote, it is worth mentioning that while some issues in that letter were responded to, some of them remain unattended, notably those indicated in paragraph A, which is in reference to money for cutting foods.
Exactly.
Now, the national executives of CHASS had since engaged the GS management and the Minister for Education severally on these matters, but with no solution on site.
CHASS again goes on to say that they want once again kindly inform the good office of the Minister. Schools have now reached their wit end, and it has become extremely difficult to manage the system effectively. They say that debt owed because of the non-payment of the recurrent fees, except exam, has put a lot of school heads in a very comfortable situation, and in some cases some school creditors are threatening legal actions against the schools. This situation, they say, is compounded by the current need to purchase stationery for the ongoing admissions.
Additionally, aside the lack of money, some key food items have not been supplied to the schools since the inception of the 2024-25 academic year. According to CHASS, this has made the feeding of students very difficult for school management and is now even creating some disciplinary problems and uneasy calm on school campuses. This is a source of great worry to the school authorities as the schools, according to them, the school environment are gradually becoming unsafe to stay and working for both teachers and students as well.
Wow, that's interesting to hear. But they are making some demands as well, James.
Yes, they are requesting for the release of the funds owed to the schools in respect of the recurrent fees, and as you earlier mentioned, cutting the food items from their storage zone to the various schools. Those monies that have been in arrears should be released, and catering for the day's schools as well for the 2023-24 academic year. They are reminding the minister in the letter to ensure the immediate supply of adequate food items to the school. So it's not only about money to cut the foods, but some food items are also in limited supply in the schools. They added that, quote, it is our considered view that to maintain peace and safety in our schools and to guarantee the safety of lives and properties in the schools, our school heads will not be able to feed the students. Parents and guardians will be notified accordingly to advise themselves until the food situation normalizes. Also, major activities like the ongoing admission processes may have to be temporarily disrupted, since a lot of stationery is involved until schools are paid monies to actually fund such activities and quote. So that is where the issue is, that if those monies do not come now, the school heads would advise themselves and tell the parents to also advise themselves on the well-being of their wards.
Quite an interesting development in senior high schools there. But this issue has been taken up by the minority in Parliament, and they are questioning the government over the use of funds approved for the running of senior high schools amidst revelations that schools now have not received some key food items since reopening.
The current situation, as revealed by a letter written by CHASS to the government through the ministry, is most worrying and disturbing. And we got here largely because of government's refusal and denial to accept the reality that the free senior high school policy implementation has left a lot to be desired. And rather than addressing the issues as have been captured in almost every communique issued by CHASS after its annual conference since 2017, government has largely ignored the requests, demands, and suggestions made by the headmasters of the secondary schools. So we are here because of government's denial and refusal to admit to the debilitating implementation challenges and to commit to work as a stakeholder with the rest of society to address.
Well, let's bring in Eric Asante, who's our Central Regional Correspondent. He's been going around for us and has joined us on the telephone line now. Eric, grateful. What have you found on your run to some of the schools in Cape Coast?
Well, Sammy, the situation is dire in some of the secondary schools that I visited here in the Central Region. Most of these secondary schools with these peculiar problem have the absence of essential food items like rice, oil, and of course sugar. Sammy, to my surprise, a renowned school here in the Central Region, the kids tell me on Tuesday they were fed breakfast, they were given porridge in the morning. The whole of Tuesday they were not fed. On Wednesday they were not fed. They had to parents had to come in for them to be fed Thursday and of course today. So it tells you how dire the situation is here in the Central Region. A school like Ekuafo Senior High School in the KEA district, Sammy, there's absence of oil and even rice for the canteen women to cook for these kids. So the situation is quite dire here in the Central Region.
Okay. So when they took in the cocoa in the morning, nothing was given again until Wednesday.
This particular school I'm talking about St. Augustine's College here in the Central Region. The kids tell me on Tuesday they were fed cocoa in the morning. They had to resort to their chop boxes for lunch and supper. On Wednesday, the whole of the day, they were not fed. And my inquiries, my sources, there's conflicting reports with regards to why the kids were not fed. One source tell me that the canteen women or the matron, of course, and the staff in the kitchen decided not to cook because of unpaid allowances, something I cannot independently verify. But when I spoke with the kids, they confirmed that apart from Tuesday that they were fed with cocoa in the morning, on Wednesday they were not fed. They had to get into their chop boxes. And of course, you can imagine those without food in their chop boxes would definitely have to just look elsewhere for their breakfast, their supper, and their lunch. So here in the Central Region, I can confirm that a school like St. Augustine's College, the kids tell me on Wednesday, the whole of the day, they were not fed.
Quite an interesting happening. Thank you for that. But I can only imagine what I would have done if I were in their shoes. But let's bring in CHASS National Secretary Primus Barrow, who's joining us on the telephone line. Now, I'm grateful to you for joining us. So, what food items were you provided when school reopened?
Good evening, and good evening to your listeners. Yeah, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, please, sir.
Yes, so again, as has always been the case, the kind of food items that schools were provided would normally vary slightly. But generally, the picture that we have is that most of the staples, let me just say, to answer your question, generally, what we know is that rice was generally supplied to all schools at the inception of the academic year. But most regions and most schools are complaining of all the other major staples. We are talking about maize here, we are talking about beans, we are talking about gari, we are talking about other food items like oil. Most of those ones have not been provided to our schools at the inception of the academic year. So that is the picture. But the situation may vary. It's possible that some of these things that I've mentioned, some schools might have been provided, but generally that is the picture. That is the impression that we've gotten from our leadership across. Yeah. I
mean, we got a reporter who is telling us that some students were fed only cocoa on Tuesday morning, and they were fed nothing until Wednesday. How is this situation, from the national perspective, as you may probably have report from your members?
The situation, as I've indicated, is not satisfactory. But if you are talking about Tuesday and Wednesday, we may have to do a further interrogation as to whether it is as a result of the table strike, which we know that most of the cooks went home, or it is actually because of the lack of food. The truth of the matter is that the food items, like I said, the situation is not too good. In fact, that's what has informed the letter that we've written to our minister through our Director General, of course, which I didn't copy Joy anyway. We don't know how you got it. But the situation is generally good. But on the specific case about the St. Augustine that your reporter mentioned, I don't know for sure whether it's as a result of the strike of the cooks or it was as a result of the fact that they really do not have food items. But to say that generally most schools, and I'm speaking authoritatively, most schools do not have most of the food items that we're talking about, major food items.
Has the National Buffer Stock Company given you any reason why this is the case?
Unfortunately, we don't know. You should know that Exchange Commodity, another company, it's only Buffer Stock now that supplies to all the schools. For example, if we take a place like Upper West, it's more than 2 years now that National Buffer Stock hasn't supplied. It's been some other companies. We normally, now the nature of the food supply comes from central government, and we do the free SHS coordinator. We've tried to find out from them across the country. The story has always been that the food items will be supplied. That has been the response that has been given to us. So at that level, but at the national level, Exchange Commodity, we've been engaging our DG, we've been engaging the minister himself on several occasions, always ready to engage us, and the assurances have always been given. Unfortunately, like I said, apart from rice that has come in recent times, most schools have not received these other items. So we have not had any official explanation from Buffer Stock as far as I know. Or Exchange Commodity,
Your letter seemed to suggest that if nothing happens, you cannot continue running the schools. As we speak today, how many days can you run the schools until you say enough is enough, you have to close down?
Well, I pray that we don't get to the issue of closure, and we've never gotten there since the inception of the free SHS. We've run into very difficult times as far as food situation in the schools are concerned. These are realities. This is not anything that anybody can deny, that we've never run into very serious challenges like we are doing now. But the truth of the matter is that we get into times like this, and the issues are always will always be resolved, and whether satisfactorily or not, to a large extent, authorities have always been able to resolve them. So we are just hoping that with the concerns that we have extended to them, of course, as I'm talking, we are in touch with the coordinators, regional coordinators, with our authorities, and the assurance is being there. So we just hope that we don't get to the issue of closure. It's not within our mandate. But of course, if we get to a certain level, like we have indicated that, of course, we've had some rumors of some students, some little bit disturbances in some schools with respect to absence of food, and that's why we are just trying to throw in the towel and to caution that we don't want to get to a level, because life is very important, property is very important, and a hungry man is an angry man. We don't want to get to that level. It is not the first time. Even last year, you are aware that some students, there were riots on some campuses because of this food issue. That's why we are throwing in the towel as early as possible to alert the authorities that the situation is not good. It's not actually good. I mean, to be frank with you, it's not good as we will want it to be. So we just hope that the necessary steps will be taken and to avert any of these situations. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Once yes. we are talking about, we want government or those in authority to do something about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand from you.
Yes.
How many days are you on life support, such that if government doesn't step in, maybe things can go way.
I think the issue, like I said, a lot of schools are on rice. And the earlier the better. If I tell you that even as the situation stands now, some schools maybe depend on the quantity of rice and some other support that they may get from elsewhere. The truth of the matter is that some schools actually get some other support from other stakeholders, from some benefactors, from old boys and other things. So you cannot actually, and that's the difficulty.
Yeah.
But if I to talk of the situation, it's so dire that if I to make a general statement, I will say that in the next 3-4 days, I mean, we shall have emergency supply, food supply to the schools. Otherwise, it will actually put some of the schools in a very, but as we even talk, some schools are in very dire situations, very dire. They will tell you that if by tomorrow say they don't even get the food, it will be extremely difficult to keep the students on campus. Now, what makes it even more difficult for some of the schools is that it's not even every school. Granted that we are not able to cook for the students, and we said, okay, you buy from the common market. It's not every school that has a decent common market, and these are all the dangers.
Okay.
So, well, fortunately we are always in constant talks with our regional directors, our district directors. As of when the situation gets too bad, we'll call them in and they will advise us as to what to do, and that will inform the kind of advice that we're talking about. Okay. The baseline is that the situation is not good at all, and something urgent needs to be done.
Primus, I'm grateful to you for joining us. Primus Barrow is National Secretary of CHASS. Let's bring in Dr. Clement Opaki, he's Deputy Ranking on the Education Committee of Parliament. Doc, I'm grateful to you. You have been keeping a close eye on senior high schools across the country. We've been speaking on this particular matter. What really is the real issue here? Why there's no food, or there's a dire situation in terms of food in these senior high schools?
Well, let me say good evening to you and good evening to our listeners. To indicate that I actually intercepted the SOS letter that has been written by CHASS to the government. And I published it earlier today with a statement drawing attention to the issue and also underscoring the fact that the government seems to care less about what, for all intents and purposes, is a very critical and dire situation. Anyone who looks at the content of the letter and you appreciate what is going on the ground, as has been confirmed and narrated by the General Secretary of CHASS, clearly would come to the conclusion that government must be held solely accountable for the current situation. And I believe that conclusion is justified for a number of reasons. As a member of Parliament, I am fully aware that every year that the government has come to Parliament with a request to finance the implementation of the free senior school policy, we have always granted that request in full. And if that is the case, what then explains the reason why government, through the ministry, and for that matter, the National Buffer Stock Food Company and the Free Senior School Secretariat have failed to make sure that there are sufficient quantities of food in the storerooms of our various secondary schools. And then we have also become aware that government actually owes to various schools funds that should have been released for recurrent expenditure for the past 2 years.
The code
and so
says
if we have to be honest and sincere, then government ought to be bold to tell the Ghanaians that it is struggling to implement the policy. And that is why we've been calling for that. Look, the policy is a good policy. It is severely challenged by implementational deficiencies, and that we ought to take a second look at how to improve and sustain it.
Okay. You sit on a privileged committee, the Education Committee of Parliament. What will you do in this matter to ensure that the senior high schools get the needed funding they need to get this running?
Point to, but I can tell you that the Education Committee of Parliament has always struggled to get the attention of the powers that be. This that we are contending with at the moment is not new. On several occasions, the NDC side of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Education, myself and the Honorable Notu in particular, we have been consistent in calling attention to the fact that the implementation of the policy is deficient, rather than government admitting and accepting that there are many issues that ought to have been addressed, and there are many matters that ought to be strengthened out, and to address the issues as captured in the communiques issued by CHASS every year after their annual conference. Government simply has ignored all the calls, all the requests, and indeed all the demands from various sectors of society, from various stakeholders on what to do to improve and make the policy implementation sustainable.
Okay. So you are powerless in this circumstance.
Yes. I'm sorry. The only option available to Ghanaians is to vote out the MPP, so that we can have a government that truly cares, a government in waiting, which has outlined a very comprehensive program of action to improve and sustain the free senior school program by abolishing the double track system, by bringing private schools to participate in the delivery.
But as a member of Parliament, you have other ways to get the minister to come to Parliament and answer why this is the situation. Not wait for a change in government before.
Well, we have been making the effort and we are not getting any relief. This should not be the responsibility of Parliament alone. This should be the responsibility of all citizens, including you, the media. Shouldn't we be holding government accountable for failing to meet its obligations to young men and women in this republic, where our students are being starved, some are being fed unwholesome and expired food items? Is that acceptable?
Oh, no, do stay with me here. Don't go yet, because we are getting the information that there is a breaking news from Parliament, and our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante is joining me with that breaking news. Kweku, what are we learning?
So, Brace, it's barely a week for the 2024 presidential election and parliamentary election to commence, because on the 1st of December, there's going to be special voting. But the majority in Parliament, led by Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Markin, the leader of government business, has just sent a request to Parliament requesting an urgent recall of the House. We will recall that the Supreme Court last week did declare that the conduct of the Speaker in relation to declaration of those forces as vacant were unconstitutional. We have been expecting that something of this sort will happen. The majority leader himself had indicated that they will wait for the Speaker of Parliament to make his own decision, and that if he did not, they were going to force his hands. And so that letter has now gone to the Speaker of Parliament. Let me read. It says, Right Honourable Speaker, and this is from Alexander Fenyomakin, during the 6th meeting of the 4th session of Parliament, which was scheduled to take place on the 7th November, you adjourned without any consideration of government business. Mr. Speaker may recall that there were a number of urgent government business that had been advertised and scheduled to be carried out prior to the adjournment of the House. The business include the request for tax exemptions, a 250 million Ghana Stability Fund project, consideration of the President's nominees for appointment as justices of the Supreme Court, ratification of a mining lease, that is a bauxite mining lease, and also the lithium mining agreement, up to 15 bills that the majority side wanted to transact in the House. Alexander Fenyomakin continued that, Mr. Speaker, I submit that reconvening Parliament at this juncture will send a powerful message of national unity and institutional stability. It would demonstrate that even as we approach the peak of the electoral season, Parliament remains steadfast in its constitutional duties and committed to advancing the national interest. In view of the emergency or the urgency of this government business, I crave your indulgence to consider exercising your mandate under Order 57.3 to recall the House to consider the above standing business. I must emphasize respectfully that these are high priority business for government. He goes on to quote Order 57.3 that provides that the Speaker may summon a sitting of the House before the date or time to which the House has been adjourned, or at any date or time after the House has been further adjourned. Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court's ruling on Article 97(1)G and H provides us with a clean slate to move forward in unity and purpose. The Speaker of Parliament has 7 days to respond.
Okay.
7 days expires next week, Friday. That is 1 day to 1st December for special election. And then the Speaker of Parliament can then decide whether or not he will recall Parliament immediately or give the 14 days notice. If he chooses to give 14 days notice, that will take us past the election up until around 14th December. And that is what the NDC MPs have said they expect. If the Speaker of Parliament decides that these matters are truly urgent, for which reason Parliament must sit, then he will not use the 14 days notice that is required by the standing orders, and he may recall Parliament immediately.
When is the shortest possible time Parliament can sit?
If you look at the precedent the Speaker of Parliament himself has set, Parliament will not sit up until the 31st or 30th of November, because that is when the Speaker of Parliament's 7-day notice expires. And when it does expire, he will then have to choose whether or not he believes that these matters are truly urgent, and then he can schedule between first is Saturday, second is a Sunday, between 3rd and 6th of December. If he believes these matters are emergency, Parliament will sit within that space or after the election. That is in the bosom of the Speaker now, Brace.
Well, we still have Honourable on the line here. You've heard the majority leader wants Parliament reconvened. What's your reaction as a minority member?
Well, I have no reaction. What I know is that my party's national chairman has informed us that we ought to be in our constituencies campaigning, and that we ought not to respond to any so-called recall to Parliament. So, although our party says otherwise, what the party has said is what is going to guide me and my colleagues.
But you have voted to serve the people of Ghana, not
I have
your
just
party.
told you what I will do. It is also my right to decide what is good for me and my constituents. I am here with my constituents campaigning to get my mandate renewed. It is also part of my work. And in any case, the Speaker has not even recalled Parliament yet.
All right. So can I consider this as a view that the entire minority shares in, that you won't come to Parliament if it is reconvened?
You asked me a question, and I've given you my response.
Yeah.
I don't speak for the minority. We have a minority leader.
Okay.
He is called Dr. Atuba.
No, you mentioned that your national chairman says you should stay in the constituencies. That's what I'm asking.
Yes, and it is public knowledge. So it is not new.
Okay. So you are going to obey your party chairman and not
what the party says is what I will do through my leadership. As I said, the majority so-called can decide to file a petition to the Speaker seeking a recall.
Okay.
That is their right. It is also the speaker's prerogative to then decide what happens. That hasn't even happened yet. In the meantime, the directive that I know of is what I've quoted to you.
Okay. All right. I'm grateful to you for your time here. So that is the Dr. Clement Opaki's Deputy Ranking Education Committee of Parliament. Kweku Asante is up next with Ghana Connect. Kweku.
Brace, I'm interested in knowing, what do you think about that hawker under the new flower pot? I mean, the minister moved in, went to destroy some tables of some persons who were hawking under the new flag. There are people who have said that let's put a human face to development. And there are those who say that no country can develop with quote and unquote lawlessness. You can't allow hawkers all over the city.
I subscribe to that thinking that you cannot develop with lawlessness. Yeah. Sometimes let the laws work. I also agree with people who say we should it's not like you should approach it with a human face. Yeah. Rather, we should take a cue from, I've seen videos from, is it Cairo? So maybe under the interchange, we could designate areas as stores. Yeah. So these are properly regulated and planned stores that we can regulate activities there. So you cannot even dirty the place and move on. Look, I saw the video of the interchange and we even have fountain there. Yes. Imagine if you just allow an unregulated hawking, how the place will be. If you pass Circle and look at how we've turned Dubai into a beautiful infrastructure. Look at how we've you know.
Especially when you're headed towards Abu Sio.
So I'm thinking that it is either we get our leaders to say, let's become innovative, and the space under them, let's have regulated stores and give it out for people to sell there, or we don't do it at all, and you don't allow people to mess up in quote the place. So
I like the nuance you introduced to the debate, and that is what we are doing on Ghana Connect today. This week, President Akufo-Addo commissioned that new flower pot interchange. Just hours after that, there was a hawker who sells coconuts right under. And then later on, there was a woman who was selling pear and banana. The Greater Accra Regional Minister moved in, destroyed their tables and all that. There's a big conversation on social media, even on mainstream media. We connect on these matters. I'll see you soon.
There's a